They haven't even given him a chance. Those were the words of a Watford supporter who follows me on Twitter at Orns WFC. And she is quite correct on that. And those words resonate with me because this man was not even given a chance. There's just no way around it. Rob Edwards was not even given a chance. Why should I be surprised? Why should you be surprised as a Watford Football Club supporter? Why should you be surprised that this would happen? I must say that when I learned of this news, looking at Twitter, I couldn't believe it. My instant reaction was the one that I tweeted out at Orns WFC on Twitter. And that Rob Edwards is no longer the head coach of Watford Football Club is not only just annoying, not only just ridiculous, but is also very much Gino Pozzo. And at some point, you have to figure out that it's not the head coach that's the issue at Watford Football Club. Rob Edwards was brought in to make this club, this particular club, as it represents itself on the pitch, a club that had some ambition, that had some youth, that had aspirations not just for promotion, but for winning the championship. And the way that you do that is not only to bring in a Rob Edwards or a Richie Kyle. The way you also do that is to make your squad radically different from what it was at the end of last season. Watford made changes here and there in the summer transfer window. It's been well documented. It's been well discussed. But the one thing that Watford did not do sufficiently when it came to the summer transfer window was to get enough defenders in to fortify the spine and the backbone of that team in front of its goalkeeper. I gave this club a B plus with caution on their summer transfer window dealings. The one problem with the caution, as I explained why I gave them a caution along with that B plus, was that they did not do enough to strengthen the defense. And voila, hey presto, you now blame the head coach for your failure to do what you're supposed to do. You don't like defenders. I guess you're allergic to defending. You're allergic to getting better personnel. Courtney Hawes is the only person that you brought in here defensively to strengthen for a run at the championship title. And you still have two defenders on this team who are not primetime players anymore. They're not starters anymore. And the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect different results. And to cover up for your insanity, you go and fire Rob Edwards. Because let me tell you something, Rob Edwards didn't just depart. He was sacked. Rob Edwards was sacked. I told you over and over again about the Edwards confidant, close friend of Edwards, teammate of Edwards, formerly in his football playing days, who told the journalist Toby Gillies that Rob Edwards was not happy with the lack of his own involvement in the Watford signings over the summer. I told you that over and over again. I mentioned it in the Watford, on the Twitter page, the UF Warns WFC Twitter page. I mentioned it during the Warns podcast. I mentioned it on Orns WFC Twitter Spaces. I've mentioned it here on the Orns YouTube channel. I can't tell you how many times I've mentioned that. And I'm telling you, I bet you that also has a little bit to do with what's going on, as well as the obvious impatient owner. There were, in my view, behind the scenes, this tension between wanting to put this public face on that I'm happy with the squad, that I'm happy with Mario Gaspar coming in here. I'm a big cheerleading fan of his. And what you were hearing, as I said, from the journalist Toby Gillies, who was telling you that there were close people in connection with Rob Edwards who were telling Toby Gillies that Rob Edwards was not happy with the lack of involvement that he had in a lot of these signings. One of the only two signings that he was involved in was Courtney Horse coming in. The other one may have been Keenan Davis, and maybe the third one, because there may have been three, is the one with Mario Gaspar. And many of us were saying, wow, he's publicly supporting this. I don't know if, as I said at the time, if he genuinely did that because he believed it, or he was just towing the party line. I will never know that now, nor will you. All of us were calling out for Ethan Laird, many of us were, and we were all calling out, or at least many of us on social media were, because I don't know what because social media is a small ecosystem of the larger Watford fan base, because there's only a small percentage of Watford fans on social media. It's easy to think that that small percentage represents every Watford fan. They don't. So I'm going to tailor these comments to what a lot of people on social media were saying. And sometimes you can't take everything or many things said on social media for any kind of gospel or any kind of insight. And I'm on social media too. But the point is this: many of us are crying out for defensive strengthening. We were not happy with the fact that there was not enough done in the defense, hence my B plus with caution on the transfer market. This is absolute lunacy what happened today. And you cannot keep doing this and expect things to improve. You are not Florentine Perez of Real Madrid, who sacks managers after they win Champions Leagues. You are not Florentine Perez at Real Madrid. He famously sacked Carlo Ancelotti after he won a Champions League title. And guess who's back managing Real Madrid? That's right. Mr. Ancelotti is back. And he won a Champions League again, just a few months ago. You are not Chelsea, who sacked their manager every few months or years. Thomas Tuchel won a Champions League with Chelsea. In 2021, he was sacked less than 6 games in to a brand new season at Chelsea in the Premier League. This is not who Watford is. Watford aren't these folks at Chelsea who've got lots of money who can do what they want with. Watford are not Real Madrid, who've got lots of money and lots of Champions League titles and La Liga titles and can do whatever they want with. Watford Football Club is a small club, a proud club that is now, in my view, not only the laughingstock, it's been that for a number of years now, but its reputation is being tested in certain areas. Not with the great work that the club does off the pitch. It's second to none. No other club in the world does what Watford FC does, and as well as it does. And Watford still has improvement to make in that front. But no one does it as well as we do in terms of the kinds of services we give off the pitch to so many people. But also, no one in the world does it like us on the pitch when we fire manager after manager after head coach after head coach after head coach after manager after head coach. Scott Duxbury, by the way, is not the problem here. Scott Duxbury is the mouthpiece of the owner. This is not Scott Duxbury's doing. This is the owner's doing. You don't fire the messenger. You really have to look at the very top of the pyramid. That's what you have to do. It is Gino Pozzo who makes Scott Duxbury look like an idiot, because we can all go back to June the 13th of 2022, as I did today, as Andrew French, who reported in the Watford Observer on that date, did today as well in his reporting at the Watford Observer. It was Scott Duxbury who gave an interview, days-long interview, to Andrew French in June of 2022. And in those days-long interview sessions that the Watford CEO and chairman, Scott Duxbury, gave to Andrew French of the Watford Observer, this is what Scott Duxbury had to say, in part. I'm going to read this to you because I am not making this up. Quote, "We will be supporting Rob Edwards, come hell or high water." That is the quote from Watford chairman and CEO Scott Duxbury, as it appeared in the Watford Observer on June the 13th, 2022. Andrew French wrote the story, and this was exactly what Scott Duxbury said to him, as reported. And now Scott Duxbury is made to look like a complete idiot by his owner, by his employer. Oh, let me read you something else from this entry on June the 13th from Andrew French. The question was posed by Andrew French to Scott Duxbury in June of this year in the Watford Observer. Does that mean the days of hiring and firing coaches to the extent we become the butt of jokes are now over? Question mark. That was Andrew French. Scott Duxbury's answer, in part, quote, "When I put forward Rob Edwards to the board, I explained it was like signing João Pedro. You are investing in a very good young talent that you believe in. He may have some bad games. There may be some times when he's not quite performing to the potential you saw. But you wouldn't just suddenly dispose of João Pedro if that happened. You saw the potential, you believe in him, and you help him grow. And that is what we needed to do with the coach. And that is why we had to change the culture at the club." The culture has not changed at Watford Football Club. The same tired, impatient, panicky mentality is a constant at this club. Ever since this owner came into this club, that has been what you have been living with as a Watford Football Club supporter. Have there been great moments where all of this madness has paid off? Yes. FA Cup semi-final appearances, an FA Cup final appearance, flirted with Europe for a while before we ended up finishing 11th. Promotions, we've had 2 or 3 of those, maybe 4 of those in the 10 or 11 years that Gino Pozzo has been ruling the roost at Watford Football Club. But what we've had in the last 3 to 4 years, bar the one promotion. In fact, when you think about this, you just shake your head at it. What we've had, bar that one promotion back in 2021, in the last 3 or 4 years, has been absolute bedlam and chaos. We've had a toxic atmosphere at Vicarage Road. We've had players who don't want to put in a shift. Rob Edwards certainly cannot escape some blame. But the problem is that during these last 3+ years, we've had more insane decisions after insane decisions after insane decisions when it comes to personnel on the pitch. Now, what some of the wise things that this club has done and this board have done, obviously João Pedro being kept, obviously Sarr being kept, obviously getting in Courtney House, obviously getting in someone like a Hamza Chowdhury, obviously bringing in people like Vakun Bayo and Keenan Davis, particularly Keenan Davis, who I think is a terrific player and is going to even get better. Those are just a few of the things that I can say about what the good has been lately. But this refusal to invest in defense is absolutely foolish. And head coach after head coach after manager after head coach has to be dismissed before you might think about looking at your defense. Why are you bringing in these coaches? Why are you bringing in this man? This man got a promotion of a football club, Forest Green Rovers. That's what he got you. And you know that the fans of Forest Green Rovers were so angry at Watford Football Club because they believed that Watford had intervened behind the scenes and they believe, had tampered with the contract of Rob Edwards at Forest Green Rovers to bring him to Watford. And in 193 days from May of this year to September the 26th of this year, which is today, $193. That's what you got out of Rob Edwards. And you took him away from another club who probably would have gone on to bigger and better things with his continued presence there. And you brought him to us. And as that Watford fan said to me on Twitter, you didn't even give him a chance. You didn't give him a chance. You didn't give him a chance for so many reasons. One of them is you didn't do enough to strengthen this team when it came to their defense. And that's been the case for years. You didn't give him enough. You didn't give him enough. That's why he has a thin squad. You didn't give him enough. That's why he's playing players out of position, like a Hassan Kamara, who was on the right-hand side all the time, wasn't happy there, got injured, and then when you brought him back onto his left side, you saw how he provided the assist for that goal against Sunderland that was scored. Keenan Davis getting his first for the club. You didn't give Rob Edwards the personnel. Oh, but now we're going to fire the head coach again. Really, really good idea. That's just a fantastic idea from the ownership. Very well done. At some point, you have to start looking at the board. At some point, you have to start looking at the owner. Are there Watford supporters who would like to see a different owner? I know that there are. I really know that there are. I would like to see someone come into this club who has a lot of money, who can pour it into this club, because this club definitely has some financial issues, financial sensitivities, and provide some real stability. Or Gino Pozzo should only focus on one football club and stop robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's what I think should be the alternative. I think it's either there's a new owner come in here with lots of money and a structured organizational sense and an investment in recruiting and an investment in getting solid player personnel in defensive positions on this club and having a deeper, more rounded squad. Or Gino Pozzo should really consider focusing on one club. One club. He sold off Granada a few seasons ago to Chinese investors, I believe. And there's two clubs he presently has, Udinese, who are doing very well right now, by the way, and Watford. I think Gino has to make a decision about which one of those two clubs he really wants to focus on. I think that's what has to happen here. Because one person's feast is another person's famine. And it's very clear right now that Watford Football Club is the famine. Its supporters are the famine. You don't get rid of a head coach after 10 games. You get rid of one after 7 games because that's what happened with Cisco. Didn't we see this same scenario last season? Didn't we see it? Cisco Munoz, gone. 7 games. 7 games. Didn't we see this scenario the season before? Vladimir Ivic, oh, we weren't happy with him because he's plodding and he's boring, and he's dry, he's joyless. And all those things were correct about Vladimir Ivic. Joyless, dry, no personality, completely smacking these folks with whips, basically whipping these Watford lads. No camaraderie, nothing. This is during the pandemic year, the first year of the pandemic. And he was gone by October or whenever it was. He was shown the door. Well, in maybe late November into December, he was shown the door. He was shown the door. He was out. And you brought Cisco in. We've seen this over and over and over again. And then you get rid of Cisco 7 games into his season. And then the other 2 or 3 managers that follow him don't do any better than he does. And you stayed with one of those managers for 4 months. 4 months. And you heard what Dan Gosling said about that manager. It was the worst dressing room he's ever been a part of in his professional footballing career. And the man's been playing a lot of football. I remember him at Bournemouth. I remember him this guy's been playing football for a long time. And for him to come out publicly and say that to you, that shows you how angry and dissatisfied he was. But you know why Claudio Ranieri was in there for so long? Because he and Gino were like this. Good friends, good buddies, good buddies. Oh, yeah. And Gino has always wanted Claudio Ranieri to have a part to play at Watford. Always. For a number of years. These guys have known each other nearly 40 years. And that friendship led to a further tanking. The friendship that they have to bring Ranieri in here. At the time, I thought it was not a bad idea to bring him in. I just questioned, why was Cisco gone after 7 games? 7 games. It was October the 2nd or 3rd of 2021 when Cisco was fired. That was after the game against Leeds United when we lost 1-0 and we were just horrible. We had pretty much the same team then as we do now. Troy Deeney had already left. Sierralta was still there. Sierralta got injured in that game against Leeds that we lost 1-0. It was a rainstorm. Sarr, I think, got injured in that game as well. Somebody did. Sarr may have been injured in that game as well. Actually, Josh King was the one that got injured in that game. It was Josh King. He's no longer at the club. Sar's still in the club. Sierralta's still at the club. Daniel Backman may have been in that game playing, or maybe not. I don't remember. I don't know how you get rid of a manager like Rob Edwards after you said for so long during the summer, and I just told you about the quotes from Scott Duxbury, that you believed in the man and that you wanted to stick with him, and that we're not going to do anything but stick with this man through hell and high water. 10 games is not hell and it's not high water. It's not. It's just not. 10th place in the championship after 10 games. Yes, it's mediocre. Yes, I've written a whole entry about this at uornswfc.wordpress.com that Watford remain unsettled at the international break. And I talked about the player personnel. I talked about the fact that Watford on the pitch aren't good enough. But this is not because of the manager. This is not because of the head coach. Some people saw this happening today. Some people said a few weeks ago that they may get rid of him during the international break. You don't bring in a head coach like Rob Edwards, who was trying to build a different culture at this club, and then tell me that you're going to keep him come hell or high water, and then you get rid of him just 10 games into a championship season. Your intent is not to change the culture of anything if you do something like this. And what I've been saying is that this is clear now to me that this is a rebuilding team. This is a rebuild for Watford. But the owner doesn't want to see it that way because he knows that there'll be lots of Watford fans who may not accept that. This is a rebuild. And the owner is stubborn. He's just stubborn. And he's not ever going to acknowledge or admit that to himself, that this is a rebuilding season for Watford. And instead of being honest with the fans, and instead of saying that Rob Edwards is going to preside over a new era of transition and rebuilding and stability from the bottom up, you've chosen to tell us that he is going to stick around here come hell or high water and we're going to be promoted instantly. Oh, no, not just promoted instantly. We're going to be champions of the championship. But you've told us that without strengthening the very areas that need to be strengthened properly. There needed to be more bolstering in midfield. There needed to be more bolstering in the defense, especially in the defense. There were 8 or 9 players who were injured this season. I can name pretty much all of them off the top of my head. Raymond I, Tom Deli Bashiru, Courtney House, Hassan Kamara, Ismail Assar, João Pedro, Tom Cleverley, if I didn't mention his name already. I mean, that's a few right there that I can think of on the top of my head. And I'm not even mentioning Imran Lauza. I said that this club would start to play better in the middle of October and beyond. You start to see that turn. Turns out that Gino Pozzo couldn't wait that long. Oh, no. It was just burning a hole in his hand. Oh, no, can't do anything. Oh, I've got to get rid of the manager. And you're not addressing the things that need to be addressed. So you just keep having managers on a loop. At some point, there are Watford fans who have been abidingly sticking with this owner, have to look at themselves in the mirror and ask, do I really want to continue to approve of and rubber stamp insanity? Do I really want to do that any longer? Because I don't. I honestly don't. I said right now, and I'll say it again here, that this owner has to think about two things here. Either move on, leave Watford, right? That's one. Or focus full time on Watford Football Club. I think those are the realistic choices that he has as far as the Watford situation is concerned. Because at the moment, the last 3 years, he's been getting these decisions mostly wrong. This is absolute madness. How long do you think that people are going to continue to stick with this? You're getting rid of Rob Edwards, and he had all these injuries, and I know in football, injuries happen, but I think a lot of these injuries may or may not have been because you've got a thin squad, you've got a manager in Rob Edwards who is playing people out of position on the pitch, and they get injured. Like, it can happen anyway, whether he plays them in position or not. But you have all these injuries again. You have some of your better players like Loser or Louser, who hasn't even played a game yet. Could you have waited to see what the team would look like when you get Loser back? Could you have waited? No. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait that long. And when Slaven Bilic, when Slaven Bilic comes to Watford, as he will, and they play against Stoke this Sunday, and they lose that game. Let's say they lose the game. What then? Are you going to get rid of Slaven Bilic next week? I mean, is Slaven Bilic going to last to Christmas? This is a game of three-card Monty. That's what this is. For the last few years, this owner has been playing three-card Monty with the Watford supporter base. And he's using Scott Duxbury to do that as a mouthpiece of that con game that's being played. I'm telling you how I see it. I've always told you, when I have this point of view, I will give it. When I have a point of view that is much more of a praising point of view, and always honest, I will give it. I will praise this board when it does the right thing, and I won't praise it when it doesn't do the right thing. You are going to know from me, at least, what I really think about the situation. Again, this man should still be at the club. He should still be at the club. What's the point of this? What's the point of bringing in this man as the manager? What's the point? A young progressive manager who you could have built a future of a club around. You could have built a structure around him in terms of the footballing. You could have given this guy even more power. You could have given him more decision making. You could have given him carte blanche over who comes in and who leaves. You should have done that with this manager. You should have given him a chance. That's what you should have done. And your impatience, your intransigence is what is costing this football club on the pitch. At some point, you have to sing the old song. You don't know what you're doing. At some point, you have to sing that song, because I don't think this man knows what he's doing anymore. And I think he is now like an old prize fighter who, having tasted the glory of his triumphs in previous years, is now in these last few years continuing to fight on as his skills and his abilities begin to decline. That's Gino Pozzo. He's an old prize fighter who is now continuing on while the madness circles around him. Gino Pozzo has done some excellent things at this club. You can't deny that. There's no way you could thank him enough There's no way I could thank him enough for all the very good things that he has done at this club. There's just no way around it. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and say, I've done what I've done here. It is time for me to move on. Luckily, there are people in sport who have the good wisdom and the good decency to do that. Serena Williams did it. She realized that she couldn't go on and keep playing tennis at the levels that she'd played at. She wanted to do other things of her life, different things in her life that she had been doing, but she wanted to do those things more full time. So she said goodbye to the game of tennis. Roger Federer, just last week, realized that he couldn't carry on anymore in this position that he was in. Injuries, all kinds of things that kept him away from tennis. He realized that the time was right to leave, and he played his last professional tennis match on Friday night into Saturday morning of this past weekend in London. He said goodbye. Heck, even at the beginning of this year, Ash Barty, you know Ash Barty, won the Australian Open. She said it's time for her to go. And she was only in her mid-20s. She's in her mid-20s. She said goodbye. It's time for me to go. I think Gino Pozzo has to start asking himself or telling himself the very same thing. What we need to have at Watford Football Club is an owner who has the money and who can back the manager. Rob Edwards was that man who should have been backed.